Hi, welcome to another ET Talk. I'm Cole Camplese, Chief Information Officer and Vice President for Technology at the University of Texas at Austin. And today we're going to do something a little different. The past few episodes we've been talking to people outside of enterprise technology, trying to get a flavor for how our work fits together on campus, identifying really the overlaps, and it's been really surprising to see that to me, that most of the businesses in the VP areas, how our offices operate in very similar ways, but with a different focus. But today, I have a really good friend and colleague that I've had the privilege of working with in the past, and he's new to the University of Texas. I'd like you to say hi to Matt Meyer. Hey, Matt.
Hey, thanks, Cole. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Matt, what's your, you're here now what? Are you still counting in days?
It's 23 days,
23
but it is
days.
1 month.
1 month.
From my start date, yeah.
Pretty cool. Well, welcome to Enterprise Technology, welcome to the University of Texas, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Love all of those things you just said.
That's great. Matt, title, what's your job
So I'm
here?
Associate Vice President for Enterprise Initiatives and Instructional Technology.
So you get to focus on, the way that we envisioned this position was really big, difficult things that need to be re-engineered, reprocessed. Sometimes those are movements of services across campus, and sometimes they're just a re-engineering in place. But on the other side is really where both you and I really cut our teeth in higher education, and even you before that in sort of the instructional design, instructional technology landscape. How does it feel being back in that world? Because you took a step away from that from the last few years.
Yeah. So, been in academic technology for, at the end of the day, 3 decades perhaps at this point.
Hate to say it.
But the last 2.5, deputy CIO position, I wanted to broaden my exposure to the entire IT portfolio and learn the difference between a switch and a router.
Right.
It's finally time to do that.
Yeah, I think that's probably good.
But yeah, coming back kind of the roots of academic technology, and I kind of been away from it for coming up on 4 years. So coming back in the massive upheaval and change that's really, it's not overwhelmed, but all the things are in place to really make things happen in this field that make it really exciting, as opposed to kind of running business as usual for the last couple of decades.
And so you and I both lived through the real ed tech boom, if you remember that, sort of the mid 2000s when venture capitalists came into our marketplace and
the internet.
And the internet, and then Web 2.0, and then really the rise of learning management systems, lecture capture, all these things. And it's interesting to me that they all still exist today. And I'm curious how you feel over the last decade or so, how they've been adopted. And do you see a change in like the type of faculty that use these technologies, or how they use them compared to like, say, 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah, and I think the main driver was the pandemic.
Yeah.
Right? So because of what happened, we are bringing in, this technology and adoption that was forced. No question about it, right? So when that big wave came in, and then when it subsided, right, there's still a lot of leftover, users who maybe not relying upon it, but much more comfortable.
Yeah.
With the concept of it, with leveraging it for how they want to do their teaching and learning. So I don't want to say it's become, a commodity that anyone can do, but it's much more accepted. It's not something that sat on the edge.
Right.
It just became part of the toolkit.
Yeah, because, you were at University of Chicago when the pandemic started.
Yep.
I was at Northeastern, and I can say that not only did we pivot to remote learning, we pivoted from Blackboard to Canvas in about a month. Imagine being able to do that on any normal campus. And I think you led the transition from Blackboard to Canvas at U Chicago in your role there.
Yes.
And faculty adoption was very low until that crazy day in March of 2020.
Yeah, and at U Chicago, a lot of the work had been laid down before I got there. But when I got there, the key was at this point driving adoption.
Yeah.
And not just adopt it because it's a good tool, learn to use this tool. There had to be actual reasons for motivation for faculty, right? Because they still didn't really have to.
No, and the height of technology at U Chicago in a very serious way is like the chalkboard.
Correct.
Like that's a very traditional sage on the stage kind of instruction at
Yeah.
UChicago.
It was a much tougher
Yeah.
sell,
Yeah.
right, for an adoption. So, yeah, the pandemic forced that especially a place UChicago that's very much was not having an online presence or strategy or even, so.
Or desires.
So, yeah, and dealing with 2,000 faculty who had no experience teaching online, period. But some of the lessons learned were, look, we have a toolbox, and then we packaged it as a toolbox. And we packaged, and so many other universities did this. And what was great about the pandemic is how the communities of universities, we all got together.
It's incredible.
How are you guys doing this? How are you doing it? We're doing this. Can we use that? Yeah, take it, run. And we were the benefactor of a lot of those things, and which again points to having connections.
Yep.
But not bundling it as software tools, bundling it with the instructional design piece, like,
Interesting.
hey, we're not teaching you 3 different tools. We're teaching you a workflow.
And an ecosystem.
And these tools are part of the workflow. And that changes the paradigm a little bit. And it helped ease that because we were able to continue the teaching mission after the 3-week break or whatever it was that everyone ended up having in March of 2020.
Yeah, yeah. But what's fascinating is, like, we're now watching another revolution happen that takes me all the way back to the start of, like, the learning management system. And that was the first war I fought on Penn State's campus, was just getting 1% of the faculty to adopt. We had WebCT at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And now we're on the precipice of this AI engagement here at the university, where we're going to have OpenAI and Claude available to every faculty, staff, and student member here in another couple of weeks. I wonder what the adoption curve on that looks like relative to the learning technologies that we fought so many years to get into the hands of faculty and ultimately into the hands of students. What do you think? Like, you've watched this landscape for the last couple of years. How do you think it plays out mostly with our instructors, our teachers?
Yeah. I think it comes down to what I just talked about, packaging it as part of the workflow. Adoption is not going to be, I want to go, here's a tool, come learn it, come to the training and learn this tool. You'll get some genuine, people that really want to come to, that early adopter type.
Yep.
But it's kind of that middle core who you really are trying to talk to about trying this. And again, you don't present it as a tool to, here's how it operates and, here's how LLMs work. No, I want to know what it does.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I think, and we talked about this a little earlier today, but going a little further and understanding the workflow of the person coming into the part where they're learning and adopting. So
right.
Let's start with a problem you have. Let's start with something you do that maybe you don't think's a problem, but something that could be, let's say it's automated or what have you.
Right. Introduce them to the idea of like we always used to say, let's find a spot where your practice is flawed or your outcomes are not what you want. Let's do an intervention right in that one spot. Like sort of pick your spot. Don't think about like changing the whole thing. Just find the place where you can wrap your head around making a difference right there.
Yeah. And a lot of this follows my own learning process that right in just the 23 days and 1 month that I've been here.
Yeah.
So watching, being able to experience, okay, I've worked with Claude before, but Claude work, okay, I've tried that. And I'm like, I really want to see if it can do this. I want to write a strategy, but I'm going to give these basic things and like bullet points or whatever's in my head, feed it, and watching it come back and going, okay, I see how you got that. Right? Subject matter expertise came from somewhere. And now it's wanting to have a conversation back at me.
Yeah.
And the artifacts we're creating, like, it just blew me away. I mean, my first 2 weeks, it was like, oh, look at this, 5 strategy documents.
Yeah, world class.
So take that experience and someone else's kind of the paradigm of how they come in, how we'll call it, the learner comes in. And it doesn't have to be as structured as the old-fashioned, Dick and Carey instructional model. Mm-hmm. Right? You can just start going and then let it take shape later in the process.
So that's interesting. We got invited to the AI Studios like lunch retreat.
Yeah, we crashed it. Yeah,
we did. We crashed it, but that was a really fun roundtable, and we were talking about like more in their world, the AI in the development world, and publishing pipelines and all these other things. But as I was sitting there, I started to really think about, boy, this is a lot like instructional design, like the way that you can arrive at these things. But I also heard somebody in the room say, well, people are a little nervous because there's no requirements document. Yeah. And as an instructional designer, you remember the days where you didn't even pick your technology that you were going to put your content through until you really understood the instructional problem. Right. Like the AI workflow that you just described sort of challenges that entire methodology.
It does. It does. And kind of the example we talked about. Again, I've been around software development. And again, it's got to get the requirements. You got to nail the design. Right? You got the wireframes have to be agreed upon, and that's part of an important process because changes later down the road are very expensive.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's the bottom line. So, what would happen in a world where maybe you forgot a couple of requirements? Oh, by the way, I forgot this requirement and this one. Go.
Yeah, change order.
So something that would be days of back and forth communications. Hey, we forgot this requirement. Okay, well, let's plug that in. Let me go to the designers. Let's talk to the engineers. We'll see how this looks in testing.
Yeah, we'll build a plan for testing. We'll build a plan. Like every step is like a multi-tiered revision process that is days, not hours.
Right. So now it is, hey, it's built. It looks good. Yeah, but what about this? Oh, we forgot that as a requirement. It's input, and then, all right, let's see what you got on that requirement. Hey, does this fit? Yes or no? Yeah. Look at the cycles that are now taken out of it. I'm talking even the simplest things, like something that could take a week, which we consider very small back in the day.
Yeah.
Minutes, hour, till it's been adjusted.
Well, think of the metrics we used to use relative, like what does it take to design an hour of delivered instruction?
200?
Yeah.
200 for moderate multimedia. I still have the numbers in my head.
Yeah.
200 hours. Something a little more, something better, 250. Something bare bones, 170.
World Campus, our goal was 100 hours of multiple person design to get to an hour of a class, and a class is 15 hours.
Yeah.
So, it's not tough to do the math on the economies of scale there. And it starts to make me wonder, even in that field, the way it works is, as an instructional designer, right, you sit down with your subject matter expert, the faculty member, and you try to draw from them all the things that they want to see their students learn at the other side, and then you break that down into objectives, and you go through that, and then you assign the faculty member to create content, and it's back and forth and revision up and down with multiple people then building images and diagrams and all this stuff. And now that same instructor could walk up to ChatGPT and say, I need you to be an instructional designer for me, and go direct from their head to Canvas or to a worksheet or another piece of instruction delivered. Like that to me is such unexplored territory.
Yeah.
And I think you noticed it right away. There is not a massive pool of instructional designers at the University of Texas, because we are also a very residential campus. I wonder if you see the role of AI with faculty, helping them shift to more, structured learning design based content, and I wonder if they would adopt and move in that direction.
Yeah, for me, the jury's out on that. I think so many faculty, again, they're not required to have professional development in the art of teaching, right?
No.
And that's just the way it is. And so I think, yes, it could take on the role of instructional designer, but I think the more important elements of AI is they already have a structure of how they like to teach anyway.
Right.
So they're probably going to lean in the direction of, well, geez, I'd really like to know how it's doing. So they can get to the back end of this intervention where there's now, because we're also collecting a ton of data.
Right.
And you can ask this data pool.
Right.
Right. They go, okay, after this quiz or after this assignment, instantly show me some of this important data I never thought about before.
Yeah.
We can say, hey, ask it how many click views or how many people watched the video all the way through, or what was the one problem in that quiz everyone had problems with. Like literally just ask it, what was the number one problem, the most missed quiz question, something like that. You're just asking a system. You're not reviewing a report.
But that's what a lot of designers would do, right?
Yes.
I mean, I remember doing that where we would comb through logs and test scores and results to find where the faculty member needed to go back and do remediation.
Right. We're kind of like doing mental data mining.
Yeah.
And now I look back and go, oh man, I just love to ask the question like, hey, what question was the most missed? And also you could ask it, do you think it was because it's poorly written or I didn't teach it correctly?
Right. So you can even ask, they can even get down deeper on their analysis before they maybe they just find out, oh, the question was misformed.
So yeah. So I think the real opportunity is on the what I'll call the back end.
Yeah.
Like on the what I'll call the interface end of it actually happening in real time. Oh, I'd like to know more about why this worked and this didn't work, and what is working, and then people will start asking deeper questions.
Right.
And then hopefully that will inform instructors from that end. That it'll put them in a place where they go, oh, let's say that, go back to that quiz question. And it's like, well, perhaps, in fact, the system could look back at the material they read and go, actually, after reading the text, it might be a little misleading or it's not clear.
Yep.
Oh, you know what I'll do? I'll find a better way to do this.
Yeah.
But that's instructional design happening in real world.
Exactly, and that's it. So they're finding their answer to their challenge, and then they can literally design their way to the other side of that next new challenge.
Yeah, they're truly designing backwards.
And it's like every faculty member could have, if they so choose to use these tools this way, like a personalized instructional coach in a lot of ways to help guide the way that they think about their teaching.
Yeah, and I think it's our job, with the group, the team that I have. I think we have to think through how to package and present that.
Yeah.
To then create our adoption strategies. I think that's the important thing to do here, because forever there's been like, oh, if we just give faculty members, we just taught them the instructional design model.
Yep.
I'm not going to say they're not interested, but they're busy enough as it is.
But they're physicists and they're chemists and they're political scientists. They're at the top of their field, and we're asking them to come in down to like entry level behavior of ours.
There's no time for that. But what they are primarily, they understand asking questions of data.
They sure do.
So if we present this, package as a tool that can help with that, and here's how you interact with it as a data person to influence your teaching in an easy way.
It really has me thinking about, so we're members of the Unison Consortium.
We are, yes.
And we have access to the UDP, the Unison data platform.
Yes.
And it makes me wonder how, with the dawn of AI, how that platform could become almost an everyday opportunity for faculty, because the Unison data platform has every single clickstream piece of data that comes out of your learning management system, right? It knows everything: time on task, time on page, logins, did you watch the video the whole way through, did you really submit the document? Everything is there. And to be able to make that available as like a data layer for a front-end AI skill or agent that each faculty member could ask specific questions about just their sections of courses, and maybe even compare anonymously over other courses that are similar.
It would be as simple as an example that I've been thinking about as I've kind of looked at some of this, but how to engage faculty. You could literally ask the data. You're asking the data.
Yeah, and it's their data from their course.
Who are my 5 least engaged students? Okay.
Based on what? And then it would actually ask you that.
Well, then it'll prompt. Now the prompts start.
Yep.
So this one. Here's the 5 based upon this. Okay, show me the least engaged as far as watching this particular video, or you know what I mean? Like you can get down to them thinking about strategies. Okay, I got to figure out a way to engage those students for some reason. It could be something as simple going, you know what? I just realized those 5 sit in the back of the class.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be something as innocuous as that, right? But I get that as a super simple example. But you could then start quickly connecting your own dots from the engagement with AI, and then you take off. I think I know what I want to do.
So let's think about that, but think about it in the next layer, which is the agentic layer, where that report is delivered to those faculty every day. So that could be automated. So every day, the faculty who sign up for that service or whatever, let's say, they get a daily rundown of the things that they're interested in,
Right.
right? Like automatically. So every day they're presented with an overview of their class's performance and maybe 2 or 3 strategies that maybe they could employ to go back and look at it again. It's
Yeah.
pretty wild when you start to think about
Yep.
the combination of having almost unlimited intelligence, the right set of questions, and access to the right data. And we often do it for like financial purposes, and we look at people data.
Sure.
But this is really what we're here for, and to be able to give faculty that power. And I wonder if they would start to see AI differently, through a different lens, if it were really aiding their practice as opposed to what a lot of them say it does. It confounds it because of the assessment challenge.
Sure. I mean, the last in IT, especially in what we do in higher ed, but it's been about, hey, we need dashboards,
Yeah.
right? Okay, well, what are we measuring here? Well, these, and it's always been a strange mix, right? Because these dashboards end up being the intersection of usable data versus gettable data,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, well, they really want this. Like, oh, that's really
Yeah, but I don't
hard.
have that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we may, but I don't think
That's
they want
really hard to get.
They don't want to hear how much that'll cost to do.
Yeah.
So you end up providing dashboards that are, GED, good enough dashboards, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but imagine a world where the dashboards, you could create your normal cadence dashboards. And it's like, I need to know this.
Right, because a dashboard is something that gets baked, right? Like, we have developers who build dashboards in Power BI and Tableau, and that's their job, but they're baked.
Yeah.
They're not flexible in the way that I've seen like Claude Code pull data out and display it right in the preview pane, and then I go, oh, that's an interesting thing that makes me ask a better question. And
That's the iteration,
Right.
the nonstop iteration back and forth is what, and you'll notice it has us thinking about how to structure next time we do anything with engaging with AI. As long as we understand it's bringing us, its level of subject matter expertise and the ability to do something with data.
Yeah.
Because the human is, I'll call it the third element, right? And we will see something that will spark, because you and I could be doing this, have the same exercise in AI, and what you notice will cause you to ask a whole different stream of questions than I might ask.
Right. It's
Because of our interest level.
and it's like sort of all I can think of is like the multiverse, where you and I start in the same place, but because of the way we interpret the learning that we're getting out of the machine, right? Because it's artificial intelligence, but at the same time, when it's doing its work and it's describing to you what it did, in that I often find that I learn something new, and I pose a new question because of what I noticed about what my interest is. And I think that that's what's really, really fascinating about the way that these tools are helping people evolve toward being better. And
because
you
the
don't
human
hear
element-
that much, right?
The human element is about the lens. Everyone's got a different lens to the world.
That's right.
And they're coming from a different place that day, that time, that hour.
So it's an interesting perspective, because I hear so many people talk about how AI is going to make us dumber. And I can tell you my work, especially with Claude and OpenAI, is that I learn more in a session than I feel like I give it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel the same way.
And I can describe my challenge and my process to a point, but then its output fills in my gaps with the collective knowledge of humankind, I suppose.
Sure.
And so like every time when I sit down for like 20 or 30 minutes working on something, I learn so much about the subject I'm working on. It's making me a more well-rounded administrator, I can say that much.
Right. You learn from it, and it as you see its output, you develop your own personal, like, kind of adjusted schema, I guess. It's the old instructional design term, right?
Yep.
Like, oh, yeah, right. And now I walk around with different frameworks already on how to approach something because of this interaction. And then I think what it enables us to do is to then figure out how to double down the calories we burn on things,
Yeah.
on the human element, the relationships.
Yeah.
And hey, it's time to
Well,
figure
that's
out how
our
to
token
collaborate.
burn, right? That's
Yeah.
what we should be out there burning, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so, you showed up, what, May the
May f-
4th?
May the 4th be
May
with
the
you.
4th be with us. May 5th, speaking of humans and burning calories and intellectual tokens,
Yeah.
we had our first major incident with Instructure, with Canvas,
Yeah.
our learning management system. And that was really your baptism by fire
Yeah.
coming in. And the greatest part about that, it was a horrible event. Nobody wants to deal with that. We were a little lucky because finals were over, but we had unsubmitted grades. There was a lot unknown. We won't get into those details. You can read about them on the internet. But what you got introduced to with outside eyes is how the campus responded.
Yep.
And you being so new, you were bringing ideas from Tarleton, Northeastern, Chicago,
Yeah.
Penn State, to UT that we didn't even have we didn't have in our processes already. And I think it was like an awesome way for you to onboard. A little unorthodox, but pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I the first 24 hours, I was sure that you were all punking me. Like, oh, this is how we're gonna break them in.
Like we just pulled a switch.
Yeah.
So anytime we hire a new AVP in a certain area, we bring down their primary system
just
to see how they
have
behave.
a global security threat. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, we didn't do that to you.
Yeah. I mean, nobody wants to walk into that, right?
Right.
And we're still kind of dealing with the ramifications,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a whole other topic, right? Because we could also talk about, hey, existentially, how should we be thinking?
And I think that's the more interesting topic that I think we need to, like, we are having that conversation in real life, but I think it's one that we should bring to the podcast in the future, because I think
Absolutely.
everybody is thinking this.
Absolutely. I think the landscape of how some of the outcomes, they'll be a little more defined in probably a month.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, I think it's going to involve, like what we heard this morning, it's going to involve tighter partnership, probably shared governance.
Yep.
This thing that, hey, we're an ecosystem, right, from vendor to customer.
Yep.
And we've got to kind of coalesce to protect the enterprise and protect the missions, other than, hey, we offer a product and some support.
Exactly, because for those that, what Matt's referring to is we met with the CEO of Instructure this morning, just to really talk through, a couple things. I applaud them for doing this, that the CEO is personally on Zoom calls with every CIO in the country.
Oh, yeah,
or at least
absolutely.
the ones that are their
Yep.
biggest. So I applaud them for that. But the thing that really dawned on me was, as they were talking about needing to get better, we were cycling through how we need to get better as well.
Yes.
And one of the big learnings from all of this is that very few of us in higher education treat the LMS as a first-class ERP system, right? Have you ever seen the learning management system managed really well? I mean, the only place I ever saw it done well was Penn State. Because
that would have been the model,
and
for sure.
It had, God love him, Terry O'Hearn, who ran that whole group, and that was treated like it was a finance system there. And that was the realization that got made in the compliance committee meeting the other day with the president and the provost, that one of the things that we've learned is this is not a boutique application anymore. It doesn't sit in your shop. It needs to be moved into the ERP team and run.
Right.
Run
we
like
need
a
we need
real
to
platform.
reformulate how we operate the thing, again, from it being operational to the adoption. Right.
Yep.
We have to think of this. That is our ecosystem. That is our entire value chain. Is not like, hey, it's up all the time. That's not a measurement, right? Like, and honestly, hey, it's up all the time. Well, it's supposed to be up all the time.
Yeah, it's supposed to have 5 nines. That's the way it
Trust
works.
me, I get it. It's hard work.
Yeah, but we pay money.
Think about the back end, on the side of enterprises
it's
to
insane.
make those things
Yeah.
work. But at the same time, we don't sit here and say, how great is the electric company doing today because the lights
Right.
are still on.
Right.
If they go off, well, what was that about? Right?
Yeah,
So that's just unfortunately the way it is. But something like your learning management system, that's the face of teaching and learning to the world for your university.
it is the only piece of technology that all of our faculty and all of our students use on a daily basis.
Correct. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And most of us treat it like a second-class citizen in the stack of people, finance, and student, right?
Yeah. And I'd love to know what the ratio of invested resources into your HR platform is versus your LMS. Like, how big of a gap is that? And like, we need to.
Yeah, we need to close that gap. And I think that that's, at least in the circles that I'm talking in, that's the realization that's happening. And on the sort of the larger picture, we're also trying to figure out what's our business continuity play here.
Yeah.
Like, LMS goes down in the middle of the semester, it's a problem. It goes down during finals week, and kids can't graduate.
Yeah.
They don't get their transcripts, which impacts their aid, which, like all of those are the existential threats. And the fact that we have to rely on this ERP that sits up in the cloud, and we have no way to even get grades out or make sure an assignment was submitted without any way to do it. And so we had a pretty interesting conversation with the Instructure guys about different things that they're thinking about doing. And, in some ways, it's nice to see because this has become a bit of a forgotten technology. Over our careers, we had 20, 25 years of trying to drive adoption. And it almost became like, default. Oh, yeah, you got Canvas. Yeah, you got Blackboard, whatever.
Yeah, and the irony of it is, hey, when it was new, really, the early adopters and some of that, that quiet middle were in there, but here we sit 2026, and it's more adopted than it's ever been.
Without a doubt.
So, but now it just runs. So I think the whole idea of software as a service, we're going to have to revisit that as well. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? Because I think to a lot of people who are it's software as a service, someone else does everything. We need to really evaluate, just because it's being run in the cloud by a vendor, there's still a ton of work that has to happen on this side of the fence.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to start putting a value to that and understanding how that works in the whole ecosystem. Look, people on the back end, they kind of know already, and everyone's going to say, well, we don't have enough this and that, and that's likely true. So now it's time to have a conversation to what does it take to make this fully effective, and the resilience piece. How do we activate a resilience piece? What do we have to have in our stable to make it work at the snap of a finger?
Right, because we had sort of the opposite problem of what we did with the pandemic. We had the tools, but not the adoption. Here now we have the adoption, but the tools failed us. And it's making us, like you say, reevaluate everything.
Yeah.
And I do wonder with the rise of AI what it's going to look like with individual classes building micro-learning environments and students and faculty. But I think the LMS is it's not one of the applications today that I would say is really at risk. It's still in its adoption cycle, And now what's going to be interesting is how faculty can extend that with the tools that they have, right? If they dip their toe, like you were talking about, maybe on the back end, and that's how they discovered, maybe that's the gateway into saying, well, if I can do that, I can build an interactive activity for my students that they can actually manipulate and really learn atom structures or something like that. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, and the key is around that model. Yes, definitely get the early adopters. First of all, you have to recognize there is a community or practice of faculty who relish or are in teaching with technology.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it's a matter of, are we going to be intentional about finding them and giving them a voice and a place,
elevating them onto a stage. Yep.
At University of Chicago, when I got there, it's like, hey, faculty, there's no one really into teaching learning of technology. Well, if we look, actually there are.
Yeah.
And then finding them, and then, hey, we have resources. We're going to engage. We're going to help prod it along, because just because we offer a bunch of tools, that doesn't mean, no matter how good the tool is, it doesn't mean there's going to be adoption.
That's right.
Right? Faculty are high-end professionals, highly intelligent people that they need to see someone in their field do something successful or interesting to then have a conversation.
Well, their time to them is more valuable than the effort until they see an outcome.
Yeah.
And I think part of the story behind this is that if we're going to derive more value out of these tools that we're paying for, it's sort of the opposite of AI, and this is what struck me lately. The more you use it, the more expensive it gets.
Yeah.
But it's the opposite with like Canvas. The more you use it, the more reasonable it is because of the hours on task, and actually you learn more by engaging more.
Yeah.
And I think that we've put it in a category of, it's just there, we don't have to think about it, but it's purpose designed by learning scientists to do some things really, really well to help students learn. And I think it's time that we get back out there and derive that value and introduce that to our faculty again.
Yeah, and we're talking about the consumer end of the value chain of this proposition, but I'm also curious to see what the vendors do. Like, what is Instructure? What is D2? What are they going to do with AI to make their product better?
Yeah, and how much will it change the economies of that platform? And will it come at the cost of being able to hire 3 or 4 instructional designers?
Yeah.
And because like everything we invest in is a choice, right? Like, yeah, we may have more people that are the engineers on the back end, but it's just because at some point we made a choice to invest there, not up here. And I think people are the ones that are going to make the difference in all of this. And I think that's where the investment's going to happen. And I'm struck with this one thought that I want to ask you before I let you go, and that is, so you've been here 23 days, which equals a month.
Yes.
Which is weird math to me, but I guess that's the way it works with days. What's the one thing that has really surprised you about showing up on the 40 acres?
I would say the surprised me in the world I've been kind of in,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm still trying to get to know my own little micro universe of enterprise platforms. But just how a university is so big, right? With the resources we currently have and the way they're placed, right? And I now know a little bit of the history of like reorganizations
Right.
and how the things are. So really creating the framework at this point. But how these teams do so much with really so, I would say so little, right?
Yeah.
So, you're talking about running the entire LMS and the support, which is somewhat loosely structured at this point because so much transitions happen, and and the structure has not had a chance to go like, okay, let's take around now that we're doing this, what do we need?
Right.
And just seeing like, oh wow, like this is a big. I've been at smaller universities that have as many resources to do in certain areas. So I find that incredible. And overall, the campus energy is incredible.
It's off the charts.
Yeah.
And it's the first place I've worked where everybody I work with has a massively deep passion for the place in a positive way.
Yeah.
Even though there are negative aspects of work anywhere,
Right.
People really, really love it. And it's what brings me to the office every day, is the energy that I can absorb from other people.
Yeah. 30 days in and hook 'em.
Yeah,
has
exactly.
a whole different
That's
energy
right.
and meaning to me already.
Right, there you go. Well, you know what? I think that's the perfect place to wrap up, man.
Yeah.
So, so hook 'em, and thanks, Matt, for joining us on the podcast today. First of many visits I'm expecting. So,
appreciate it.
I hope
This
you
has
wrote
been
that into
fantastic.
your contract that you get like a bonus every time you come on the podcast. But
Oh,
you may have missed that.
Yeah, well, I'll make sure to get it in with my agent.
For your renewal.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in today. This is a lot of fun. Matt and I are going to continue to explore these conversations, and I'm sure we'll be back talking to you soon. So, as Matt said, hook 'em.